From regional security and people-to-people exchanges to the economy, the leaders of South Korea, Japan, and China agreed to revitalize three-way cooperation as they met today in Seoul. Against this backdrop, North Korea informed Japan this morning that it'll launch another satellite into space between today and early June. Israel strikes a refugee camp in Rafah, reportedly killing 35 people. This came hours after Hamas fired 8 rockets towards Tel Aviv. It's May 27th, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Min. The leaders of South Korea, Japan, and China sat down in Seoul earlier today for the first time in more than 4 years. Normalization of relations was one of the themes of the summit, which will affect expanding cooperation in many areas, from people-to-people exchanges to the economy. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon starts our coverage.
Fully restoring and normalizing relations was a key goal for this 9th Trilateral Summit between South Korea, Japan, and China, which resumed after 4 years and 5 months. And on Monday, President Yoon, as the host of the summit, says it did just that.
오늘을 기점으로 3국 정상회의는 정상화되었고 올해로 25주년을 맞이한 한일-중 협력 체제가 앞으로 더욱 성장해 나갈 수 있는 발판이 마련되었습니다.
They also acknowledged that they share some of the key issues such as aging demographics and supply chain disruptions, and by working together, they can resolve them.
Since the last trilateral summit, the international community has faced diverse, complex and interconnected problems. Additionally, there are significant common issues among our 3 countries, such as low birth rates and aging populations.
We agree that in the face of new challenges and opportunities, South Korea-China-Japan cooperation must demonstrate new responsibilities and actions.
The summit comes after months of efforts by South Korea to make it happen. And President Yoon, on top of normalization of the relations, has emphasized tangible results for the citizens. In fact, the joint declaration the 3 adopted laid out the resumption of many dialogues between the 3 parties on top of specific actions they will take going forward. There were 6 main parts: civilian exchanges, climate change, the economy, public health, science, and disaster relief. Some tangible results were announced through the declaration. For the people-to-people exchange, the 3 will designate 2025 to 2026 as the year of cultural exchange among the 3 countries. For climate change response, they will collaborate with Mongolia to reduce dust and sandstorms in East Asia. And in terms of the economic and trade aspect, they will continue discussions to speed up trilateral FTA negotiations. In terms of public health and aging societies, the 3 will tackle future infectious diseases, and they adopted a separate joint statement on this. For science and tech cooperation, the 3 will resume the Trilateral Science and Technology Ministers meeting.
이번 회의에서 채택된 공동 선언은 우리 3국이 민생 증진과 영내 평화와 번영을 위해 긴밀히 협력하겠다는 의지를 담고 있습니다.
Next up as the host is Japan, and the leaders agreed that they look forward to the 10th summit without notifying when it will take place. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The Trilateral Summit also touched upon peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. The 3 leaders agreed to make positive contributions, but were short of detail when it came to addressing more sensitive issues. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young explains.
Seoul, Tokyo and Beijing agreed to make positive efforts towards a political solution for a stable Korean peninsula as a common interest and responsibility, but appear to maintain their differences on the finer details. On Monday, President Yoon, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and Chinese Premier Li Chang released a joint declaration following their trilateral summit in Seoul. Amid the regional security crisis posed by North Korea's nuclear and missile program, the three leaders reaffirmed their support for peace, stability and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula. However, the three leaders reiterated their positions on denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and the issue of abductees. South Korea and Japan have been pushing for the denuclearization of North Korea in particular and the release of their nationals held hostage by Pyongyang. However, China has held a different view on the approach to denuclearization and remains mum on human rights issues related to North Korea. Speaking at a joint press conference, Yoon called for active cooperation between the three countries.
한일 중 3국 공통의 핵심 이익인 영내 평화와 안정을 보장하기 위해서는 궁극적으로 자유롭고 평화로운 통일 한반도를 실현한다는 목표 아래 UN 안보리 결의를 충실히 이행하면서 북한의 비핵화를 위해 노력하는 것이 중요합니다.
Addressing North Korea's plans to launch a spy satellite by early next week, Yoon said the act would be a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions, and the international community must respond sternly. The Japanese PM also voiced his concerns.
If North Korea proceeds with the launch of a satellite, it would be a violation of the UN Security Council resolution, and I strongly urge that they halt such a plan.
He added that the denuclearization of North Korea and the stability of the Korean Peninsula are in the common interest of Seoul, Tokyo and Beijing. However, the Chinese premier refrained from criticizing Pyongyang and did not mention denuclearization.
I believe that the parties involved must maintain restraint and prevent the situation from getting worse and more complicated.
In a separate meeting with Lee Chang on Monday, Yoon requested China to play a constructive role regarding North Korea, emphasizing its duty to uphold the global nuclear non-proliferation system as a permanent member of the UN Security Council. According to spokesperson Kim Soo-kyung, the South Korean leader also asked for cooperation on the issue of North Korean defectors. China has routinely deported North Koreans back to their homeland, where they face serious consequences for attempting to defect. In response, Lee said he is well aware of Korea's concerns and that he will continue to communicate in the future. Yoon, during their bilateral meeting the previous day, similarly pressed for China's cooperation amid North Korea's weapons exchanges with Russia. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And a separate business summit involving the leaders and business heads from South Korea, Japan and China has set the tone for strengthening economic cooperation, such as further developing trade partnerships. Our trade correspondent Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
As neighboring countries, South Korea, Japan and China's economies are closely linked, celebrating 25 years of trilateral cooperation this year. At the 8th edition of a business summit on Monday afternoon in Seoul, the leaders and 240 business heads came together to discuss a wide range of regional topics. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida remarked on the common challenges the countries face, such as aging populations, while Chinese Premier Li Qiang spoke of deepening industrial cooperation as Beijing looks to stabilize its supply chain network. President Yoon Suk-yeol commented on the need for the neighbors to respond to global issues together, as well as further developing trade agreements.
3국 간 교역 투자 플랫폼인 RCEP의 활용도를 높이는 동시에 2019년 이후 중단된 한일 중 FTA 협상을 조속히 재개하여 경제 협력 기반을 업그레이드해야 합니다.
Accounting for nearly a quarter of the world's GDP, the three countries have attempted to facilitate easier trading in the past. Negotiations on a free trade agreement began in 2012, with 16 rounds of talks since then. FTAs abolish tariffs and barriers, but progress on a trilateral agreement has been slow for a variety of reasons. The last negotiations were in 2019, and factors including COVID-19 and Beijing-Washington tensions have hindered progress. Other economic partnerships, such as the China-led CPTPP and Japan-led RCEP, have also diverted attention away from the trilateral FTA. However, economic relations between Seoul and Tokyo have improved, with resumed finance leader talks last year ending a 7-year hiatus. But Japan falls behind the likes of the United States and China when it comes to South Korea's exports. And an expert explains why FTA negotiations between the two have been slow and what Seoul is attempting to achieve through a free trade agreement with Tokyo.
Even though Korean products are pretty good and less expensive, they are sticking to their own product. So main target of Korean, government and Korean corporations are, penetrating into Japanese market.
As for trade relations with China, it was formerly the country's biggest destination for exports before the US took over. Data from the Bank of Korea show that the value of outbound shipments to the US overtook those to China for the first time in 21 years in the first quarter of this year. But the Sino-Korean FTA that was set in motion to cover goods trade could now be expanded to the services sector to include tourism and culture.
The expansion of free trade agreements in other areas like services and investment, and the interaction of people that are most important, and that is in the traditional kind of interest of free trade agreements. So I think it is a necessary and a natural process of development.
With these negotiations between Seoul and Beijing scheduled for next month, and Yoon's urging to resume FTA talks, attempts to strengthen economic ties are definitely underway. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Now, against the backdrop of these high-level regional talks, Pyongyang informed Tokyo this morning of its intentions to launch a satellite into space between now and early June. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Kim Jong-sil reports.
Another satellite launch warning by North Korea was issued early on Monday. Japan's Coast Guard received an email from the North that it plans to launch an artificial satellite between Monday and June 4th. Pyongyang also gave notice of 3 locations of potential danger following the launch. The projectile will likely fall in one of 3 places, 2 of which are in the southwestern area of the West Sea and 1 in the Pacific Ocean east of the Philippines. Here's what a South Korean military spokesperson had to say about the announcement.
North Korea's launch of a military reconnaissance satellite is a provocative act that violates UN Security Council resolutions. Our military will take measures to demonstrate its strong capabilities. South Korea, the US, and Japan are working together in the case of the launch, and South Korea and the US are closely monitoring North Korea's moves.
The Ministry of Unification also told reporters on Monday such a satellite launch is a clear violation of a UN Security Council resolution that bans all missile launches using ballistic missile technologies. The ministry demanded that Pyongyang immediately halt its illegal satellite launch plans. North Korea previously launched a satellite back in November, which successfully entered orbit after failures in May and August. South Korean intelligence authorities said Pyongyang got help from Russia after the November launch. On Sunday, Yonhap News reported citing a senior defense official that a large number of Russian experts have entered the north to support its satellite launch efforts, saying a launch could be imminent ahead of the Trilateral summit between Seoul, Tokyo, and Beijing. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
South Korea's military staged air drills near the inter-Korean border on Monday in response to North Korea's announcement of its planned military reconnaissance satellite launch. The Joint Chiefs of Staff said around 20 fighter jets, including the F-35A and F-15K fighters, took part in strike and attack training, hours after the regime notified Japan of its plan to launch its second spy satellite. The military explained that the drills were conducted to demonstrate South Korea's will and ability to retaliate immediately, strongly, and until the end upon the enemy's provocation. In the Middle East, an Israeli attack on a refugee camp in Rafah has reportedly killed more than 30 people, hours after Hamas fired rockets towards Tel Aviv. Our Yoon tells us more.
An Israeli airstrike targeting a tent encampment in Rafah killed over 35 Palestinians and wounded many more. According to Gaza officials, the Israeli Air Force bombed shelters in the Tal al-Sultan neighborhood of western Rafah. The camp, where thousands of people who had fled eastern areas were sheltering, was set ablaze in the attack.
All of a sudden, a missile hit us in our neighborhood. All the people are burned. Go and see what happened to them.
Footage showed intense fires and people carrying bodies into emergency vehicles. Most of the victims were reported to be women and children.
We went into the house and did not find anyone. Then we checked over the wall and found a girl and a young man who had been cut into pieces.
The assault on the region, previously designated as a safe zone by the Israeli authorities, comes despite the International Court of Justice calling on Friday for Israel to cease its military operations in the city. According to the Israeli military, earlier on Sunday, rockets were fired from Rafah, targeting central Israel, although no casualties were reported. In regards to striking Rafah, the military said an IDF aircraft struck a Hamas compound, which Hamas terrorists were operating, claiming it took out 2 Hamas officials. It added that the strike was carried out against a legitimate target under international law, but was aware of reports indicating that as a result of the strike and fire that was ignited, several civilians in the area were harmed, and the incident is under review. Intense anger and grief from around the world were expressed to the media following the attack, where people were tragically burned alive in their tents. A UN housing expert condemned the attack, posting on social media, attacking women and children in their shelters is a monstrous atrocity, and concerted global action is needed to stop Israel's actions now. Yoon, Arirang News.
An annual singing competition for college students stages a comeback after 12 years here in Seoul, and it took place by the Hangang River this past weekend. Park Go-nu was there.
Around 20,000 people have gathered at Yeouido Hangang Park in central Seoul. They're here for the 2024 Hangang Campus Song Festival, which aims to revive the popular college song contest that was held for 35 years from 1977 until 2012. College students take part in a singing contest with songs that they wrote themselves.
Because this is being held after a long time, I'm hoping to see participants become singers like 신해철.
The college song contest, widely known as a gateway for singers to make it into the industry, has produced the likes of 신해철 and 심수봉. On Saturday in Yeouido, the participants all had their own musical aims and ambitions.
The time we perform on stage is also another page of our youth. I hope all the young people watching our performance feel happy.
I hope people slowly walk through their life instead of being hasty. That's the message I want to deliver through my song.
At this year's competition, a total of 264 teams auditioned to make it to the finals, and 11 were chosen. The total prize money of around $14,000 was split with 5 teams, while half of the amount went to the final winner. Among the 5 winners, the band named Pentacle won the grand prize.
I was so surprised and thankful because I didn't expect such a big prize. I'm going to spread a lot of hope and kindness to people. With the prize money, I will release Moonlight, the song we showed to you tonight, also with a music video.
Let's go!
Even though the festival lasted for over 2 hours, thousands of people remain in their seats.
As a big fan of music, I hope this event happens every year because I was so happy and touched.
Seoul Mayor Oh Se-hoon attended the event and said he will do his best to make sure the competition happens next year, even bigger and better. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
Time now to take a look at what's been happening in the world of sports. In the studio with us, we have our sports editor, Paul Lee. Good evening, Paul.
Hello there.
Let's begin with football. The South Korea's men's national football team squad was announced earlier today. Any surprise inclusions?
A few. There's most of the usual suspects, the stars based over in Europe, such as Son Heung-min, Lee Kang-in and Hwang Hee-chan returning from injury. But there's no Kim Min-jae due to an ankle injury, and no Cho Gyu-song, who will undergo knee surgery. 7 uncapped players have been called up, including 20-year-old Bae Jun-ho, who plays for a team in the English second tier, Stoke City. The attacking midfielder had a good first season in England and was voted Stoke's Player of the Year. There are also first additions for Pohang goalkeeper Hwang In-jae, Kimcheon's Park Sung-uk, Ha Chang-rae of Nagoya Grampus in Japan, FC Seoul wing-back Choi Jun and Daegu's Hwang Jae-won. Oh Sa-hoon is in. Experienced striker Ju Min-gyu keeps his place, but Freiburg forward Jong Eun-young misses out. Korea plays Singapore away next Thursday, June the 6th, and then are at home to China on June the 11th to see out this second round of a qualification. Kim Do-hoon has been placed in caretaker charge, with the search for a new full-time manager still ongoing.
You mentioned Cho Gyu-sung. His team in Denmark won the league title. What can you tell us?
Yes, FC Midtjylland on Sunday sealed their 4th Danish Super League title and first since 2020. On what was a very dramatic final day, title rivals Brøndby lost 3-2 at home to AGF, meaning that a point or more would seal it for Midtjylland. They earned a 3-3 draw, with Cho Gyu-sung laying on an assist. It's been a good first season in Europe for Cho Gyu-sung, who scored 12 and assisted 4 in the league. He joined from Jeonbuk last summer. But he wasn't the only one to lift a trophy this weekend. Lee Ga-in and Paris Saint-Germain won the French Cup thanks to a 2-1 win over Lyon. He came off the bench late on in what was Mbappe's farewell game ahead of a move to Real Madrid. Elsewhere, Hwang In-bom and Werner Zvezda celebrated the Serbian League and Cup win. They are Hwang's first major trophies in Europe.
And to judo, mixed fortune for South Korea at the 2024 IJF World Championships.
Yes, that's right. The team failed to secure a medal in the mixed team event. On Saturday in Abu Dhabi, they were actually disqualified in the quarter-final. This followed a withdrawal by Won Jong-hoon in the men's over 90-kilogram category. According to IJF rules, athletes must compete until the team result is determined. Refusal leads to team disqualification. But on the plus side, South Korea finished with notable individual successes. Kim Min-jong won gold in the men's over 100 kilograms, and the first in 39 years. And Ho Mi-mi secured gold in the women's 57 kilograms, the first in 29 years. Additionally, Lee Jung-wan, Ha Lim and Kim Ha-yoon each earned bronze medals. These are South Korea's best performances in 9 years, boosting hopes for the upcoming 2024 Paris Olympics.
Great. Thanks for that, Paul. See you next time.
Thank you. See you.
Unlike the rainy conditions yesterday, there were blue skies across the country today. The weather got cooler after the rain stopped, as the wind is blowing strongly across the country. Meanwhile, Jeju Island may receive less than 5 millimeters of light rain until tonight. From tomorrow, the early summer-like heat will gradually return. It will be cool in the morning, similar to today. Daytime temperatures will be higher than 25 degrees Celsius nationwide. Since it is cool in the morning and evening due to the temperature swings, you will need to take a jacket with you. Strong winds will continue tomorrow on the southern coast. In particular, strong winds of more than 20 meters per second are expected, with a preliminary strong wind warning issued on the east coast of areas of the Gyeongsangdo provinces. Please take extra precautions. Tomorrow, Seoul, Gwangju, Daegu, and Gyeongju will start off at 14 degrees. Highs will be topping out at 26 in Seoul and Gwangju. Inland areas will continue to be sunny without any rain forecast for the time being. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.
Children's laughter, hope, dream. K-animation belongs in them. Interesting and valuable story that transcends between everyday life and dream. Surprising spectacle where imagination becomes real. An array of subjects catering from infants to adolescents. For our story to reach all corners of the world. K-animation makes healthy laughter for children. Completely new. But something anyone can relate with. Flawlessly made. And tears that go with it. K-drama. Korea is coming at you with another story to tell.
입니다. 하나 스탠바이. 방콕 스타트.
저희들의 정원이 생겼어요.
President also remains committed to boosting Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of this latest.
To discuss the current security environment.
The United Nations most powerful body on global security, expressing hope stock markets around the world have taken a hit amid speculation that the US Federal Reserve
Arirang.
A very warm welcome to everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Within the Frame. I'm Hangang. Leaders of South Korea, Japan, and China gathered in Seoul today, resuming the Trilateral summit among the three nations that have been stalled for more than 4 years. The summit came amid the Yoon administration's strong push to mend South Korea's strained relations with both Japan and China amid growing regional divide. The three nations agreed to work closely together for regional peace and co-prosperity, but showed differences in contentious issues such as the denuclearization of North Korea. What are the key takeaways from the summit, and what are the prospects for the three Asian neighbors' future relations? For some clues, we turn to Lee Jung, Associate Professor of International Studies at Gwangju National University. It's great to see you again.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
And for insights from Japan, we also have Walter Sim, Japan correspondent at the Straits Times, joining us from Tokyo. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Professor Lim, let's kick things off with you. What's your overall assessment of the Trilateral summit?
Well, it was pretty much encouraging for me, who is studying all the international affairs surrounding the region, because these days more and more people are saying with the term of so-called the new Cold War, which is what I don't like, actually, because new Cold War, I don't think that term itself describes very well the reality we encounters, but at the same time, I cannot but admit the reality, which is pretty much competitive and conflictual, even between the regional neighbor. So we do have more like a kind of strengthened cooperation between U.S., of course, and Japan and Korea, whereas we have, on the other hand, we have another like a triangle, which is composed of North Korea, Russia, and China. So we did have some tensions between the two different triangles. But through the restoration of the stalled trilateral dialogues between Korea, Japan, and China, I think that kind of, worries, concerns could have been more like I would just say, relieved a little bit. So, which was pretty much encouraging for a person like me.
And your thoughts are echoed by many experts here in Korea that although sensitive issues were left pretty much undiscussed, the fact that the three leaders got together, resuming the three-way meeting itself, holds huge significance. And Walter, President Yoon, during a joint press conference held after the summit, said that the joint declaration contains the three nations' resolve to closely cooperate for regional peace and co-prosperity. What are the key takeaways from the joint declaration?
Well, I think one noticeable point in their joint declaration was the leaders' pledge to uphold, and I quote, an international order based on the rule of law and international law. But what I felt was essential is that this statement is deliberately left very vague, and the broad statement does not in any way describe this international order as free and open, which is a phrase that is commonly used in Japan's and I believe South Korea's meetings with other countries, especially democracies in the collective West. Tellingly, despite the pledges for regional peace and stability at the Trilateral Summit in Seoul, Beijing has continued to send Coast Guard vessels near the disputed East China Sea islands that Japan controls and calls the Senkakus, which China claims and calls the Diaoyu. Today was actually the 158th consecutive day that Chinese ships have been spotted near these islands, and this is a new record, even as the Trilateral Summit was going on in Seoul. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has also called for the removal of a buoy installed by China within Japan's exclusive economic zone near the region, and the country and Japan and China obviously still remain far apart on this issue. So, while my response has thus far focused largely on Japan and China, but I think as Asia's two largest neighbors and superpowers, they are, of course, stability between the two countries is highly important for regional peace and prosperity, not to mention issues surrounding North Korea. But I think it's interesting that none of the three leaders were in office for the last Trilateral Summit in 2019. And I think it's a good sign that they are finally talking, that the trilateral mechanism has been restored despite seemingly irreconcilable geopolitical differences. And it's only if such tensions can be managed will co-prosperity, as you said in the question, will this be possible? It's very interesting to see if the three countries can build on the outcomes from today and see if they can make headway towards their long-stalled trilateral free trade agreement plans.
You mentioned a list of underlying tensions among the three countries, but the joint declaration did contain various ways to boost cooperation among the three countries across a wide spectrum of sectors. And what's also noteworthy from our standing point of view is that it did not include their unified voice on the goal of denuclearizing North Korea, which we'll discuss more as we move on. But before that, Professor Lim, President Yoon and the leaders of Japan and China attended a business summit where the three sides agreed to expand regional trade and investment based on mutual respect and trust. What are some notable agreements made in the economic sector among the three neighbors, and what significance do they hold?
From the joint declaration and from their press conference as well, for me, it was pretty much interesting to hear that all the three leaders emphasized the importance of people-to-people exchange, which for me, it sounds like, they agreed the reality. The reality means, again, we are physically just next door. We're very much close, even though, for example, the United States, U.S. is absolutely one of our biggest trading partner, and not only just trading partner, of course, that is the ally for the Republic of Korea. However, still geographically, the U.S. is apart from this region. However, China, Korea, Japan, these three countries are all just, close to one another. So as long as we are literally just neighbors in the same regions, again, the people-to-people exchanges are very much natural, and it should not be interrupted by unnecessary political tensions. So again, the three leaders all agree that the people-to-people exchanges between one another is pretty much important, which was very much, again, encouraging, again, to me. And they also, mentioned about the possibility of, accelerating the process of RCEP, more like multilateral trading agreement framework. So RCEP used to be actually RCEP Regional Cooperation Economic Partnership. It used to be somewhat competing with the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, when again the U.S. was more pushing forward with the TPP. But again, now all three leaders were emphasizing the potential of the RCEP, like a multilateral framework, or even the trilateral trading framework between the three countries, Korea, Japan, China. That was also mentioned by the three leaders. So what I'm trying to say is, again, all the three countries are, again, physically very close. and again, the people-to-people exchange is very natural, and economic relationship between one and another is very, very deep and very interconnected. So the three leaders all, I think they agreed on the importance of socio-economic cooperation among these three countries.
So some of the major agreements include expanding three-way FTA as well as RCEP and people-to-people exchanges. But Walter, complicated concerns like North Korea have been excluded from the official agenda, and the North's notice of its satellite launch that came just hours before the Trilateral summit was hard to ignore. What's your analysis of the reaction of South Korea, Japan, and China, and what implications do they carry?
Yes, I agree. It's also very important in such trilateral summits to look at what was left unsaid. So Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol were united in condemning the planned North Korea satellite launch, but Chinese Premier Li Qiang stayed silent. And of course, this is significant because there is huge technological overlap between the capabilities needed to launch a satellite into space, as well as those of the development of ballistic missiles, and hence there are larger repercussions for the regional stability as well. Some analysts here in Japan have suggested that this was actually North Korea's way of sending a signal to the three countries that it was closely watching the outcomes of the summit. Also, the statement, whilst it reiterated the call for denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, it is, I believe, actually much weaker than the 2019 declaration that called for the complete denuclearization of the peninsula. Some have suggested that due to the ongoing geopolitical situation that is worsening, Pyongyang actually sees even less of a need to denuclearize now than it had in 2019, given the cards that it currently holds. So what I think has not really been answered is precisely how this goal of denuclearization can be pursued now, especially since Russia, with which China has this no limits partnership, has blocked a UN panel that is monitoring sanctions on North Korea. So I think there are still a lot of questions on the future of the Korean Peninsula.
North Korea issue was excluded from official agenda of the Trilateral summit in the first place, with South Korean government acknowledging that it's a topic that can't be resolved in one meeting. So expectations weren't high. But as you mentioned, we could clearly see that China is highly unlikely to make one voice when it comes to North Korea issues. And many experts also say that that was exactly what North Korea was aiming for, to drive a wedge among the three countries. And it looks like its tactic was successful. Professor Lim, ahead of the Trilateral summit, leaders of Korea and China sat down one-on-one and agreed to establish a 2+2 high-level diplomatic and security dialogue. What role do you expect it to play amid continuing North Korea provocations and escalating division among like-minded nations in the region?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, many people see the current situation with the word of so-called the new Cold War. Even though I personally don't, like the term, but still, many people see today's word like that way. Especially ever since the Russia invaded the Ukraine, and the war in Ukraine is still going on. Again, all this so-called common sense or common rules, international rules, were already violated because, Russia, if you think about Russia's position in the United Nations, as one of the P5 member, again, permanent 5, which is, again, one of the founding members of the mechanism of the international organizations, again, the i.e. United Nations. However, Russia, regardless of course, they might have their own reasons to do that, but obviously, they violated, again, the spirit of the UN Charter, which is, again, not sensical. Again, as one of the founding members of the UN and as one of the permanent 5 members of the UN Security Council, again, it violated the spirit, which is a very, very big thing, again, in the post-World War II history. So having said that, now more like a kind of common senses, common rules are very much vulnerable to those kind of, again, the violation. But I do think, again, the China, certainly they don't want to be, like the Russia. I think China has its own pretty high standard to be a kind of leading country in the international society. So, there's 2+2 meetings like a mechanism through those kind of things. Again, China, I do think and I do expect, again, that China can contribute to stability of the region, because, again, the China is also a very responsible player in the regional peace and the regional security, regional stability, not only regional and the global too. 2+2 meeting, again, which is a very rare mechanism, even for Korea-like country. Again, Korea does have that mechanism with the U.S. and with Australia. And this is, again, the very rare mechanism, and we agreed with China too. So from now on, through that mechanism, I'd love to see more constructive dialogue, constructive behavior, cooperations between the two countries.
And this one's also for you, Professor Lim. Korea and China also agreed to resume their second phase free trade agreement negotiations. What are your prospects for the talks and the economic benefits it'll bring?
Sure. Again, China is the greatest trading partner for Korea, but not only just all these products or the key raw materials. Now we are trying to talk more seriously about service sector as well. I think that is pretty meaningful too. For example, Korean culture, Korean movie like cultural products. As far as I know, Chinese young generations, they do have a lot of interest, and some of them are really fan of the Korean culture. And if the trade of those cultural products can be more freer than now, and if so, definitely those people-to-people exchange can be boosted further through those broadened trade, even for those kind of invisible but very important soft power related items as well. So of course we might have some concerns as well, or we might have more like a competing aspects in service sector as well. However, again, as long as free trade and together with pretty well set up rules working on, if so, I think ultimately it can contribute to the future of the two countries' economy and then societies as well.
Leaders of Korea and China, they agreed to boost cultural exchanges, as you've pointed out, and hopes are high that it may ease China's K-culture ban still in place across various realms in China. So hopefully we'll see more exchanges in the cultural sector between Korea and China. And Walter, the thorny issue of the Naverline Yahoo feud was also brought to the table, albeit briefly, during one-on-one talks between President Yoon and Prime Minister Kishida. The two leaders saw eye to eye that the Japanese government is not pressuring Naver to sell its stakes, but rather urging the company to strengthen security governance. In your view, how would the issue impact future Seoul-Tokyo relations?
Well, I do see it as a huge positive that Prime Minister Kishida and President Yoon could agree on the way forward for the disagreement on Naval and Line Yahoo. But I also do see this spat as a sign that Japan-South Korea relations actually remain quite fragile despite the ongoing warmer ties and the leaders having built up a relationship of trust over what I believe is 10 face-to-face meetings. It really is up to them to properly manage these relations. Noticeably, I understand that the South Korean opposition has pounced on the issue to stoke, well, perhaps to stoke anti-Japan sentiment, but the view from Japan is that such an administrative guidance is, well, kind of a necessary political maneuver, if I may use this term, given the importance that Japanese voters and Japanese citizens place on their personal privacy. Of course, I must note that there are so many other domestic security failings and security breaches in this respect, but South Korea's ownership of a stake in what is Japan's most popular messaging application kind of makes it easier for Japan to seek to cast the blame elsewhere, I think. We must not forget that, of course, SoftBank also has a stake in Line, and I think Japan should also see how it can beef up its own security as well.
Well, the two leaders were also on the same page that the issue is distinct from broader Seoul-Tokyo relations, so we'll see how things play out from this point on. Professor Lim, the three countries agreed to hold trilateral summits on a regular basis. Before you go, tell us about the remaining challenges among the three Asian neighbors that call for extra attention to keep up the momentum for the three-way dialogue.
Well, trilateral dialogue among the three countries, historically too, it has been more focusing on the economic cooperation rather than the security-related issues. So in that sense, today's the result was pretty much coherent with the past experiences. However, if we think about all this North Korea-related challenges or cross-strait issues or some territorial disputes between China and Japan, for example, again, we have some potential flashpoints among one and another. However, again, as long as I mentioned earlier at the beginning, as long as, again, all the three countries are physically so close, and naturally people, they are just move across the border, again, this is more important reality, I think. We definitely, the three countries should deal with those very much sensitive issues cautiously, which is what I, again, expect from now on too.
Well, the Chinese media have also highlighted the significance of the resumption of the three-way dialogue, expressing hopes that it'll serve as a stepping stone for boosted cooperation and thaw soured relations. So although challenges remain, it looks like the three neighbors can now work together toward a new chapter. Thank you so much, Professor Lim and Walter, for sharing your thoughts. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for watching, and be sure to tune in same time tomorrow to join our conversation. Goodbye for now.